my name is Valerie Campbell. I was the key set costumer for Gilmore Girls and the costume supervisor for A Year in the Life. And welcome to Fandom Family Chats.
You know, you kind of have to get over that. You know what I mean? That's why I think that's why people are attracted to people with confidence, right? And there's a reason. It's not just because, oh, look at this guy's cool. No, it's just because he's not going to whip out when there's a problem. You know, there's a reason. There's an order to it, you know?
See, one of the other bad. I'm not really trying to like totally. I love Jared. This is my problem.
Sure,
I love Jared.
Yeah, of course.
But it's hard for me to get on Team Dean sometimes because he was such a jerk to her sometimes, which Logan was too. Jess was too. I feel like all three of these guys have had their a-hole moments.
Yeah, it's true.
And have not been the brightest bulbs in the room.
Absolutely.
Like when Rory was hanging out with Jess and Paris having the dinner and Dean walked in.
That is like one of my favorite scenes.
Mucho mac and cheese.
Yes, mucho mac and cheese. I love that.
My jaw was on the floor. He's like yelling at her.
Yeah, I know.
That's not okay. That's a red flag.
And I think they all, and purposely so. Obviously all of them had their faults. So like in that moment, but then Rory starts spiraling too, and she's flat out lying, and Paris has to jump in and save her. And then of course Paris is lying. Paris is Paris. But it just kind of created this huge cycle. And that's what I'm saying too. They were both very young. You notice Rory was obviously insecure, and that was something that was a trend throughout the entire series, and she made poor mistakes off of that too. But they were still kids. So yeah, I agree that there are moments like where Dean's insecurity caused him to make bad decisions, just like you've seen Rory do that. But I think all three boyfriends purposely, one, because they're human characters, but they all have a flaw. It's just a little bit different. And I think that was just all to add drama. It's just, here you have a series of suitors. Here's one thing that's really awesome, and then one thing that's like, I don't think so. And that's on purpose. And
I also think that Dean and Rory's relationship is very true when it comes to teenage relationships. I'm trying to hone in on my teenage memories. That was a thing. We did say I love you after a month or two.
My sister said it after 2 weeks all the time. Everybody, I love him. No, you don't.
Yeah, and that's part of being a teenager, and that's part of the teenage experience, and that is absolutely normal for you to say I love you within a few weeks or months or whatever. I know I did.
I think too that with Dean, two things that we forgot really is one, he's 16 when all this happened. But the thing with him is that even when he's married and not 16 anymore, he's still got this immaturity. He's still got this insecurity. Rory, however, when he got real bad, the breaking up after 3 months because he didn't say I love you, that was annoying. But again, like Amanda was saying, totally remember that from my teenage years. I never had that problem. I just never said that phrase. But him coming back, it was after that when she found out, shoot, I'm really behind with Harvard and she's got to go build a house. And he said, I thought we were going to hang, but I guess my girlfriend doesn't want me. Like, dude, calm down, because that's a little stalkery and you need to chill out. No. Of course he apologized, but he is just, you got to remember too that he's a hormonal teenage boy who However, after he married Lindsay, and first of all, he should have never married Lindsay in the first place. That night at Luke's, I'm just as mad at Luke about that as I am at Dean. But him marrying Lindsay, not about what he did after he married Lindsay. But even in that, he wanted Rory so bad that he was willing to sacrifice anything to get what he wanted. So I think on top of his insecurity, there was selfishness there. I will say though, in A Year in the Life, I like who he became. I really liked who he became in A Year in the Life. I think that's exactly who he was ever supposed to be.
Yep. Even Rory mentioned that too. She said, if we had just known each other or met each other now, or when we were older, when we were more mature. And I was like, yes, because that's how I had felt the whole series. I think if they had known each other as adults, or at least not as, Dean was a kid. I mean, he was 16, and I think sometimes, I mean, that's an odd age. You mature faster in some areas, and other areas, you were a kid a few years ago. So I think that's why, sometimes he seems like he's just a little child, and but again, when she said that, I was like, yeah, she took the words right out of my mouth, because if they had met after they were more mature, after there was more wisdom, after they had realized that, hey, certain things you should do, certain things you really shouldn't do, he wasn't any longer like a whining child, then I think that would have been better, or I mean, not every 16-year-old is as mature as a 26-year-old, and I think that's what it was. Maybe they were thinking that they were grown-ups already, and they were just kids. I mean, they were, he was, like I said, walking her to school, that sort of, I mean, maybe not literally walking her to school. She lived I mean, she went to Chilton, but
walking her to the bus,
that sort of thing. So they were like at that point of dating, if it were a different dream, they'd be courting, that sort of thing. So yeah, I can see how it was annoying that he was like sometimes seemed childish, but I mean, I agree.
He was a child.
He was a child. Thank you.
Except for when he wasn't a child and was still kind of.
That's my thing. My problem with in a relationship with Rory, we did have that excuse for him. Yeah, and we had that excuse for him that he's 16, he's 17. But when he was a full-grown adult, married, and still, I don't like saying taking advantage of Rory, because she knew what she was doing, but doing that to Lindsay,
no, I absolutely that was wrong, and I feel bad for Lindsay in that scenario, and it wasn't appropriate, and it shouldn't have happened, and of course that's why I say that Team Dean, while they were boyfriend and girlfriend, things happened afterwards that I don't agree with, but still overall, if you look at things outside and above that, but yeah, I mean, that never should have happened. I agree that he never should have married Lindsay. I think he was still on a really huge rebound.
Oh, he was, absolutely.
He should never have done that. I think the adults
didn't want to either.
Yeah, he didn't want to.
My face was so confused when they were getting married, like watching Gilmore for the first time and watching him getting married. Like,
I know.
Say he's marrying Lindsay. Like, my face was so confused, and I feel like it's stuck that way for a while. So I was like, wait, what?
And that's really on Luke. I mean, after their little night out and everything, Luke should have said something. At least
as an adult,
or not encouraged him to go. I mean, he should have. He said he just made one little comment, and Dean went to leave, and then Luke encouraged him to go, and then told Rory, "Hey, don't show up." The man is gonna. You can't enter into a marriage like that in that state of mind, and stay married, but B, stay faithful. It's not going to happen. You're pining for someone else, and so I was a little irritated that Luke didn't say something to somebody, especially Dean. Absolutely. And I think of that scene when they were remaking the Twickham house into a museum. And then Dean is like bickering with Luke, and he's like, "You and me, same situation. They want more." And he was like, Dean was so bitter and so angry that Rory didn't want him. And it was like, dude, pull back. And as to in a year in life, I don't think that they would have, if they met when they were older, like then, I think Dean would have been like, Rory, you're too much of a train wreck for me, so I'm going to pull back. So, I really think that they never, I like Dean as, because he did have all those good points. He was chivalrous, he was kind, he did do all those things. That scene where he stood up to Tristan at the dance is still one of my favorite Gilmore Girls. Like, I love that scene. I want a boyfriend like that for my daughter, for her first boyfriend, to do that. Like, I want to be able to send her to a dance with a boy and know that he is going to stick up for her and fight for her if he needs to. I want that. However, he is not the right fit for Rory. And I think that's what the fandom gets confused is, who do I want for me? I don't think Dean and Rory would fit, because Dean is so comfortable and so happy with his wife and all their kids and their small town little. That's not what Rory wants.
No,
and
I can tell you right now,
Dean down.
I'll tell you right now, in true Amanda form, who Rory should be with, giving who's good enough for Rory, and that would be Logan. Because I feel like Jess is too good for Rory nowadays. Adult Jess is too good for Rory. Teen Jess, I can have more arguments with. Adult Jess is too good for Rory, and she can just sit there and be with Logan, I guess, and whatever his fiance's name is, and have a throuple. I don't know.
So,
but
just to make it clear, she should be with Logan as a punishment because that's what she deserves.
Yes.
Just checking.
To make sure Mike was.
I don't want Jess to suffer. And it's also because I don't love Logan. I like Logan. I really do. I love Jess because I love Milo.
It's the Jess Dean night tonight, people.
Yeah, I know. So I'm getting back to Jess here.
I will say, I will agree that I again with adult Jess, I don't think he and Rory want the same things. Jess loves her because he loves the idea of who she was. He doesn't really know who she is anymore. And I think he pines for that. I think he misses that because she gave him a source of love and comfort.
Yep.
But Jess is too good for Rory because I think since Jess was, I don't know, would you say mid-20s? Early 20s, he has known exactly who he is. He has known exactly what he's wanted. He has done what he's wanted. And he's been ever who he is ever since then. Because we can say that because when we see him in season 6, when he shows up at our house, I published a book working with these guys. Season 7, I'm working for this publishing house. I run it now. Season 8, or a year in the life. Season 8, a year in the life. He seems together and he seems as solid as he was in the end of Gilmore. So I think that from after he had his mishap, after he I can't say it. After his teenage years, when he was messed up, and the thing is, I get why he was messed up, and I know that that's part of like the Team Jess's argument is that he was a broken kid. I totally understand that. Doesn't excuse what he did, but he was broken and he was hurting, and he look at the relationships he was shown while he was growing up.
Okay, but what's Logan's excuse?
Right, exactly.
Look at the relationships he was growing up with.
Exactly, they're both messed up people. They're both. They're.
All 3 of them, all 4 of them, if you count Rory, are all messed up.
Well, yeah,
I don't think
Dean had healthy background though.
He did. He had a nice upbringing, I guess, in comparison to the others. I will say this about adult Jess and adult Rory. When Rory was first, I guess everybody. Okay, so let me go back to where the scene where Lorelai is talking about the fact that she doesn't like Jess, right? You know, she's going on. I don't remember exactly what she's saying, but that's the gist of it. And Rory tells him several times, "Oh, you don't see who he really is. All you see is all the mistakes. All you see is all this." I think it was right after the what was it, the murder scene, thing that he built, right? And she's like, you don't see the real him. You don't see who he is. That kind of thing, because she's seen the guy who stole her book, who is into the same kind of books that she is, who is into literature. Yeah, he vandalized it, but. Yeah, some could say he enhanced it, right? You know what I mean?
I would have appreciated the notes.
That's vandalized it.
Yeah,
wrote notes in her margins.
I would have appreciated it, but Lorelai's words were, he was a thief who vandalized your property.
Right, exactly. But she could see beyond all that. I feel like teenage Rory could see who adult Jess was.
Absolutely.
Who he had the potential to be is who I think she saw.
Yeah. Right. Yes, exactly. Who he had the potential to be.
And so in her mind, he was the complete package, because he was this new kid on the block, this rebel, this renegade, this bad boy with I don't want to say heart of gold, but a core of gold, in there, that liked everything, that liked the literature, who was maybe, how do I say, a kind of like an artist type, you know what I mean? That kind of thing, where it's just like, I know it sounds different, but I'm saying it's because of the literature side of things. He knew.
Well, I'm laughing when you said artist. I'm laughing because it was just after you said the chalk drawing.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
He is artistic.
I guess he is artistic. Yeah, he did a pretty good job. I mean, it fooled everybody. So, but no, I just think I think she could see all of that, all the deeper side that he had, and what we see later on as an adult. But yeah, I mean, he had a lot of faults. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there was a lot of egging on, and a lot of other things that he put in place. But she made a lot of mistakes too. I mean, going off to New York, missing the graduation. It's like, what in the world?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was but that was freaking Rory.
Right.
Exactly. She's made her share of mistakes.
I'll fight for Jess right here for a second. The most important relationship in Gilmore Girls, the most important relationship is Lorelai and Rory, right? That's what the show's about. That's the most important relationship in this show. I personally, in my own opinion, feel like Lorelai is more Team Jess than she is Team Logan.
It's because she was Jess a little bit.
Well, and I
also feel like that's a huge thing, because Rory looks up to everything Lorelai. Let's just put it at that. Rory looks up to everything Lorelai.
Absolutely.
And I feel like Lorelai almost knows what's best for Rory.
Well, one of the reasons Lorelai is Team Jess is because of Emily. Emily was like egging her on so hard. Lock her up and throw away the key. And immediately Lorelai was like, oh crap, what am I doing?
Because she had already made the decision to not let Jess in Rory's life. And at that point, with his surface behavior, that was exactly what I wanted. That's what I would have done. And that's what should have happened. But then Emily came and agreed with her, and she realized that can't happen. I have to do the opposite of what Emily says, which was unfortunate, because then maybe keeping them separate for a while would have helped Jess have a little more stability, Rory have a little more stability, and then maybe things could have happened a little bit better than how they did, not so turbulent, So yeah, I think that's why I agree with Josh. I didn't think of it that way, but yeah, I think that's why.
I will say this.
I think Dean, by the way.
No, she didn't like Dean at all. I mean, especially after after what happened at Miss Patty's, she didn't.
For a time she didn't, but she preferred him over. She tried to get Rory to stay with him over Jess, and she tried to get Rory to stay with both Logan and Jess
until Emily, and then
I don't like Emily.
Yeah, I know, but still at the same time, that's Lorelai, right? That was her personality, so that was who she was. So I think Lorelai was definitely between Dean and Jess. I don't know. I think it was hard. I think she wasn't into really either of them. And then I think it was okay. Yeah, I think so. And I think it was okay with Logan because she could see Christopher. And so I think that was kind of how that kind of played out. I know, not popular opinion, some people here, but I really feel
I agree with it. I think so too. I think she felt safer with Dean, just because we were saying chivalrous, kind, the whole 9 yards. So I think if you look at the surface and you're like, well, which one is it? I mean, she's going to feel better with Dean. I think also too, they did not get off to a really good start. Her first conversation with Jess was obviously not a positive one.
Right. Yeah, no.
So that didn't help at all.
I think with Jess, here's the thing. Rory could have seen, and I think she did see I think you're absolutely hit it on the head. I think she did see the potential that he had the potential to become, because I think we could all see that a little bit. He was a smart guy. He was intellectual. He was all the things that Josh listed. He was those things. However, you can't just stay with someone because I see potential in them eventually down the road. Jess had to do the road he took because he had to realize he was broken and he had to come out of it. And I think that's why he came. I don't think if it had happened any other way, if he had stayed with Rory, I don't think he would have fixed himself. I don't think he would have had the drive to fix himself. I think he had to have it that way. He had to be kicked out of Luke's. He had to drop out. He had to be kicked out of school. He didn't have to leave Rory the way he left her, but he did have to get out of there in order to realize how truly damaged he was, and not even all by his own fault. That's the other thing too, is that I know there's a lot of people in other camps who are like, Jess is just a jerk for a jerk. No, Jess was basically abused by his parents' life choices. It's not
Yeah.
his fault that he felt unloved and unwanted and undesired and useless and just a joke. It's not his fault he felt that way. He encouraged it to keep happening by keeping that attitude, but he had to get out of there to realize how broken and messed up he was so he could start to come back from that and rebuild himself.
Jess has a very bohemian poetic type, personality. And I think that if he had stayed in Stars Hollow longer and they were together for longer in Stars Hollow, it would not have made for a very good thing, because I think
it would have been a different show.
It would have been much
like like CSI murder investigation.
no, don't say that. Well, you already had that,
Actually murdered people. Can you imagine?
Graduate that.
Can
you imagine Jess long-term close quarters with Taylor Dosey and Kirk?
My money's on Kirk surviving that one. And
I mean, if he didn't just knock him out, Jess would have murdered him.
Luke came pretty close.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that with Jess, like that scene where people are like, oh no, look at him when he went back for Rory. First of all, you got to think that first time he went back for Rory at the end of her freshman year at Yale, he went there to say, hey, let's leave Yale. You don't need Yale. Let's go off and do our own thing. That's not Rory. 2, that's not what she wanted. And that's why I think adult Jess is too good for Rory, because he knows what he wants. He knows who he is, and he lives that life out. He doesn't need to do this big extravagant thing. He doesn't need all these accolades and this attention. He just needs to be solid. And that's who he is at the end of Gilmore Girls, at the end of A Year in the Life. He's a solid dude. He's solid in his 20s. But I think that with him and Rory, that scene where I'm talking about, where he comes back and says, hey, let's leave Yale, he was just so desperate because Rory was the first person that believed in him, even for a moment, at least that he thought. He didn't see Luke there because Luke wasn't making out with him. But I think that is part of why he came back, is because he's like, okay, I understand I'm messed up. I understand I'm not living right. I just watched my mom marry this crazy buffoon. I need that. I want that partner to make me feel like I'm not wasting my life away. And that's why he went back for Rory, but he wasn't ready yet. If she would have left with him then, it would have been a disaster.
Yeah. And I think so too.
I do agree with that.
It was a first step, I think, to healing. I think that was his first step in the journey of healing, of stability, of becoming the adult Jess that we notice. I think that he loved Rory at first sight. I mean, it sounds corny, love at first sight, but they write it as if the moment he met her, he was hooked. And even to the last moment we see them together, in The Year in the Life, he's gazing at her with that same look that Luke gave Lorelai in season 1 when he spots her with Max Medina. And so I think that was like the parallel there. I think, it definitely would have been a mistake for her to have run off with him. I think it definitely was not executed properly. But I think that was the first time we actually start to see Jess actually learn to deal with his experiences and not let them hurt him anymore, not to be wounded, but to start to let himself be healed. So I think that was a huge turning point. I think just that exact idea was not the right idea, wrong idea, but
so
there was that moment of change.
Here's one of the reasons why I'm very much Team Jess, and you guys are gonna have to hear me out on this.
I will listen to the whole thing.
Steve, it's on my list. Crossing things off my list as we go.
The thing about it is, okay, so when you look at Dean and Rory, right? I believe they did, quote unquote, love each other. I'm gonna use a little L here, right? They loved each other, right? It was puppy love. It was kind of one of those things, and I feel like Dean acted the way he did, and he did the things he did because he felt like that's what he was supposed to do, even though he didn't have the backbone to do what he should have done, right? So I think that's kind of what happens there, and that's puppy love, right? It's just, it is what it is. I'm gonna say the L word. Logan On the other hand, I think they loved each other also. I really do. But I feel like the love that they had was more of grounded in the excitement of each other, right? So here was Logan, this amazing, how do I say, what's the word I'm looking at? I don't want to call him a socialite. What's the other word that I'm
Goody
talking
two shoes?
about? Yeah, that works too. and, and so
He was Marine, even though he was trying to be a rebel.
he's
He
exciting.
is still under his daddy's
he
thumb,
is.
that's the one thing that bugs me about Logan is that he lets
Right.
his parents control him. And it drives me insane. Be free. Go ahead.
Right. And I think that excitement can lead to feelings that are pretty much close to love, right? You know what I mean? You have to keep that excitement around. I think that's where a lot of that attraction was. With Jess, that look at the end, that through the window, that's a look of genuine love. That's capital L.
That looks sincere to me.
Exactly. To me, that's sincere. And I really feel like that's one of the reasons why I'm on Team Jess. Now, was it meant to be? Probably not. Because like we talked about, they were together earlier, Jess wouldn't have been who he was. I get that. But was the type of love that Dean had or Logan had the same? I don't really think so. I think, like you said, Jess knew who he was and what he wanted, and I think that that's where that was. It was a very grounded. It wasn't out there in excitement, or it wasn't out there just because that's what he thought he was going to be. So hopefully that makes sense. I know it's hard. I know some people may not agree with me, but
Yeah. And I think because they have the parallel. If you look at it, again, this is probably unpopular opinion for some, especially for which teams you're on, but you have that parallel between Rory and Lorelai, obviously, in every aspect. So Jess is Rory's parallel Luke. And Luke and Lorelai are obviously meant to be together. So that's why I feel, Jess truly is the one that Rory is meant to be with, because if you look at it that way, I mean, he's actually he's related to Luke, so he's the same. But I think that's why you even had that look at the end, because you still have that connection. And when you hear Luke talk about when he was a teenager, he described himself the way Jess acted as a teenager. Yeah. So just because he had a horrific behavioral problem growing up doesn't mean, like Josh said, his core, who he is as a person, wasn't.
Liz is the way she is for a reason.
Right, exactly. Liz is the way she was for a reason. Jess is the way he was for a reason. He finally learned to overcome that. He didn't have to, maybe he chose too late, but he finally learned how to overcome that. So just like you have Luke, who's not, obviously, no character's perfect. He was grumpy and grouchy, but he's obviously an endearing character. So you're not thinking of Luke the way you would think of teenage Jess. Yet, by his own admission, he basically acted like Jess growing up. He was the town Jess when he was a teenager. So I think that further helps realize that Jess's adulthood doesn't have to be molded by that. It's a surface, and inside was something good. And as an adult, that came through. So yeah, definitely. So I'm Team Dean, but as far as like who I think Rory is meant to be with, like who the one is for her, I would say adult Jess. So if you ask me, I'm Team Dean and Team Adult Jess. Obviously, I can't condone his behavioral problems, and I don't think anybody would. I think even adult Jess wouldn't condone some of the stuff he said and did as a teenager.
Yeah.
Those were just,
he's a teenager. I mean, the same excuse that we gave Dean.
Right.
He was a teenager. He was young. He was naive. Like, I see you, Maureen. I see your face over there. Don't even start with me.
I didn't say anything.
But I know you well enough. I can see your face.
No, but I get where you're going, Amanda, because out of the three, there is one that was not young and naive. That was one that acted out of
that was an adult. So. And I do think Jess was like far more mature as a teenager, but yes, he still was a teenager and he had all the hormones and he had his environment. And I think maybe that's why he finally chose to break out of it, because he had that maturity. And like Josh was saying, I agree that Rory saw that maturity in him, saw the potential. I think if he had a different upbringing, there would have been no question, there would have been no dislike. Even probably Lorelai would have been into it, because I was just watching the episode where Rory was trying to give Dean that book, and Lane's trying to explain to her, like, that's like him giving you a football, and she doesn't get it. He's like, what? He's not going to like this. And Dean's like, I don't want to read, she's trying to give him all these books to read and Jane Austen. And he's like, whatever. He's not really interested. He's just going along with it. Jess would have appreciated that book at the level that Rory appreciated it. And I think that's what it hit right away.
I love all my friends who are like that.
What was that?
Yeah.
I love all of my friends who are like that too.
Yeah, like me and Ben. Ben cannot stand to open a book.
Oh no, I'm emphasizing the word friends, not lovers.
Oh, okay. Friends, we got it.
Well, you have to be friends first. That's a good relationship starts off friendship. No, but truly, honestly, if you ask me in a perfect world how I would like for it to end up, and I know this is super, super unpopular for certain teams, but honestly, again, looking at the parallels, okay, you got Max Medina, seemingly perfect, not the one. Max and Dean, Max was, he was chivalrous. He was polite. He would take his jacket off and put it over a puddle for Lorelai. Dean, Jess and Luke, we already covered that. And then, of course, well, we're not getting into that conversation, but again, I'm not on that episode. I agree that Chris and Logan, kind of parallel each other. So if Rory and Lorelai are the same, you look at the three men in her life and the three men in Lorelai's life. So that further makes me think that Jess would be the number one for her, because I think everybody can probably make the assumption that the baby is Logan's. So look at the first generation. You had Lorelai,
right, and Christopher
have a child, Rory, but Lorelai ends up with Luke. Now it's happening again, second generation. Rory and Logan have a child, but Rory ends up with Jess. And I know that Jess would raise that child as if it were his own, the way that Luke thought of Rory that way. So in a perfect world, that's what I would like to see. Logan is happy with Odette. They keep that plan. And Rory and Jess, I think, for me, I can't see them being comfortable or content or happy with anyone else but each other. And Jess would care for that child as if it were his own, because he's already loves Rory and the way that Luke loves Lorelai. So I know that's super unpopular for certain teams, but in the world, and I'm pretty sure for all the Jess teams out there, that is what I imagine.
Yeah, and I think that we've seen it, and I mean, I think everybody's got to agree that there's parallels between Richard and Emily and Rory and Rory. I mean, they have parallel characters all the way.
One parallel, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, Emily, Lorelai, and Rory, they're the same character.
Absolutely.
They're the same person.
Yeah, they are. I'll agree with you on that one.
They're literally the same character. The same thing happens over and over. We see it with Emily and Lorelai when they're off. What is it, the spa day or whatever? And they're doing the same thing, and it's just like, I think even Lorelai realizes a little bit. And Rory is exactly like Lorelai in certain aspects. They all have their own traits. They all have their own things, but it's the same baseline. It's the same base character, and then they're grown from there. So we see those parallels between the women, and we see them between the guys. I feel like, for instance, Richard is very much like Christopher. Christopher is very much like Logan. So all of that kind of all falls back in line. They all have different attributes and different qualities, obviously, like that. But I feel like they have parallels. I think they're telling the same story. And that's why those last four words are so important, because it starts all over. It's
full circle.
And it just starts right back again where Lorelai's story starts.
This is what's bad about being in Switzerland, is I'm wanting to argue for Logan right now. And I can't yet, not, it's hard because I feel like deep down I really am a Jess girl, but that's also because I'm not a huge Rory fan.
That's fair.
So I want Rory with Logan because that's who she deserves.
Oh, okay. So I could agree.
I want to be with Jess.
If you're
I
viewing
want Jess,
if you're viewing Logan as a punishment, I can totally see where you go. I'm just kidding.
I want him.
You don't want him.
I'll take Jess. Rory can have Logan. I'll take him all day. Sorry, Ben.
I'll be completely honest. I mean, I do think that's a little harsh. I know we were joking about that earlier.
We are joking.
I mean, look, and I'm going to be honest, Logan's got a lot of great attributes about him. I really do. I mean, you know, the Life and Death Brigade brought us, I think I said this the other day, they brought us Mr. Toad's Wild Adventure. I know a lot of people don't like that, but that was a great scene. That was a great whole section of A Year in the Life. And I know some people are like, well, Gilmore Girls has never been a musical. Okay, I understand that. Maybe it stuck out a little bit, but still, who doesn't want to go on those adventures, right? I mean, the most how do I say, important parts of our lives and the greatest things come out of those experiences, right? Where it's just unplanned and all of a sudden it's just this wild adventure. And I think that's what Logan brought to the table, right? And so I agree. I think that he had a lot of good attributes. I get that. But that's why I said earlier, I feel like a lot of the attraction that they had was just really about that excitement. You know,
do you think it wasn't with Jess?
I have a feeling that it was that excitement was there with Jess because he was the bad boy, he was the little bit of a rebel, but yet he had that poetic literature deep side to him.
I think Dean was lacking the intellectual aspect that she wanted.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think we can all agree on that.
I think so.
I can say things. No, I'm kidding. Wait a minute, that came out wrong. But no, I talk about Dean. You guys talk about Logan. I'm just kidding. What I say is that Jess he was into the books. You know, like Josh was saying, he was artistic. He was poetic. He was more on that side. Dean was I mean, I don't know if he ever played football, but he was the jock, you know, just the same reason why Lane used the football as an example. He was, you know, the boy next door, you know, so that artistic, is that a word? Artistic.
Artistic-y.
Artistic.
You're trying to say artistry.
Artistry.
I like artistic-y better.
I like artistic-y better too.
We're going with that.
It's a new word. We're making up words.
I do think that in essentials, Lorelai, Emily, Rory, essentially they have the same heart. And I think that's what makes them similar. However, I think Emily is Emily, Lorelai is separate, and Rory is a mix of both of them. And I think that's why Jess doesn't work for her, because a lot of people in the fandom compare, well, that's her Luke. Well, she's not Lorelai. But I think that Emily likes her lifestyle. She enjoys the wealth. She enjoys being waited on, served on. She loves her people, and she thinks she knows what's best for her people. And I think that's what combines them all. Lorelai thinks she knows what's best for Rory and for herself, but Lorelai doesn't want the wealth side. She doesn't want that silver platter. She doesn't want that everything handed to her. She doesn't like that. She doesn't want it. Rory, however, does like that, but she also likes the life that Lorelai has. Rory wants both of those worlds combined. I think that's why, like, a lot of these parallels, and you see it with Jess too, like Jess is essentially Luke was Jess in his young years, right?
Yes.
But look at how much more advanced Jess has become. Jess was a lot like Luke, but Jess wanted more than Luke wanted.
Yes.
Luke is content where he's at. Jess wanted more. And it's same with Logan. Is, you know, he wanted more than what Richard wanted. He wanted to do the big thing, and Richard, yes, he wanted to make the money, he wanted to have that. So I think that there are similarities between them, and you can draw a line down. But I think that generation, Rory's generation, I think that they are a mix of parent and grandparent. I think that that's kind of what they're drawing, is it's the meshing of both worlds. And I think that's what Gilmore Girls, it's about the meshing of all of them together. And I think Rory is that meshing. And I think that's why they have that last word in there, is because it's Rory saying kind of what her saying exactly what Lorelai had said, only she's going to do it differently than what Lorelai did, because Rory is a different person than Lorelai. So it's like a whole new story is starting, a whole new chapter. Similar, but new. I don't know why I said similar like that.
Yeah, I mean, similar but new. I mean, I agree with that. I think she is a mesh of the two of them, but I think that just reinforces, you know, kind of my thought process, because they really are very similar. I mean, being a mesh of them, I mean, it even increases that at the end level. And I agree. I think she's going to do it differently, but you know, it's like you know, what do they say? It's like when you get home from work after a long day and, you know, you yell at the dog, you know, it's like, you know, you yelled at the dog because your boss yelled at you, and your boss yelled at you because his boss yelled at him, and then the board yelled. You know what I mean? It's just like it trails down. And I feel like that's happened with Emily and Lorelai, right? So Emily was very controlling of Lorelai. So Lorelai is now very controlling of is very controlling of Rory, but not controlling I guess they should say the opposite, because in other words, instead of saying I'm going to control every aspect of your life, no, I'm going to do the exact opposite, and I'm going to say you get to do whatever you want to do with your life, but that's still controlling, because that's, instead of setting decent boundaries, instead of putting up, you know, good boundaries that they can deal with, she's just not going to say I'm going to do the exact opposite of Emily, but it's still a form of controlling, because you set those rules, and those rules were you can do whatever you want. Whereas Emily had set those rules with Lorelai and said you can't do anything other than what I want, you know, exactly, and I'm going to think for you. She even said that in that scene where, you know, where she's talking to Emily about Jess. And then so now you've got Rory with a mesh of both of those things, and now she doesn't have anybody. She doesn't have the one step down to talk to you. But who does she control? She controls her life. She controls the her boyfriends in a way. Like, she kind of, and I'm not saying that she's controlling them, but she controls she allows certain aspects, you see what I mean, to come through. And so the Harvard Yale thing, right? You know, she made the decision to go to Yale whenever she was destined to go to Harvard, right? Why did she do that? Well, she's got many different reasons, but one of those has got to be that was in her control. That's why I say they're the same character, because they've got the same stories in just told in different ways. And that's why I just really feel like it's beautiful writing, because it just becomes full circle, you know. And so if we see that, and Rory is a mesh of the two of them, and a better mesh of the two of them, then we have to know that those parallels are there in other characters too. You know.
Yeah, I do think those parallels are in other characters, but I think that it's a mistake to say that because Rory is Lorelai, she needs Luke, and Jess is her Luke, because Rory and Lorelai are not the same. They don't want the same things. Lorelai hated that world. Rory loves it, but she also loves the world that her mother created. That was my. So I do think that there is. I think that this show.
I'll argue with you here, because I don't think that Rory loved.
I wouldn't say love
that world, because she got real tired real fast with living with Richard and Emily and being with the DAR.
I don't think she wants to live with Emily and Richard and be a child to a parent. I think she wants all that money, and that wealth and that lifestyle. I think that she enjoys what comes with it. I don't think she loves being a parent or a child under the roof of them.
No, but see, so here, and of course, obviously, since we're talking about Jess, one of the scenes, I can't remember which episode it is, but he's talking, he's like, what happened to you? You know, you used to make fun of all these things.
Yeah.
You hated this stuff. You didn't, and now you're a member of the, DAR, and you're doing all this. He literally goes, I just saw this the other day. He literally like, what happened to you?
I saw this
He
one the
wasn't
other
just
too.
like, he wasn't just like, what's going on? No, he was like literally like, what happened to you?
Because that's right before she went back to Yale. Because
Right.
Jess is the reason that Rory went back to Yale.
So that's another point.
I just wanted to see steam come from Marine's head.
No, I don't think she really loved all that stuff. I think she liked it. I think she thought that it was great. And I think that there's even an arc in there where it's like, I don't want to say she comes to her senses, because I don't think that's necessarily what it is, but I think what she comes to, I think the proper word would be, she comes to a realization that, you know what, hey, this isn't technically my life. This is Emily's. This isn't mine to deal with, where there's aspects of it that she could deal with it. But I think that's kind of what happened there.
Even like when she contently moved back in with Paris at that horrific apartment. She was okay with being at Logan's place when he was gone, but she was also like expecting not to be there. It wasn't hard for her to try to pull herself away from that. I'm not saying that she didn't like it, but it wasn't not something that she was really pursuing. It's like, hey, this is where I live, but now I'm cool to live somewhere else. I'm cool to live, at that dump that Paris lived at. I'm cool with being in Stars Hollow. I don't think it was
love
so much.
that either.
No, she didn't love it, but she was okay with it.
That's my point, is that she's the mix of Lorelai and Emily. She likes both of those worlds. She wants both of those worlds. She's trying, and I think that's why she's having an identity crisis in A Year in the Life, is because she's trying to fit herself into one mold or the other, when what she is an amalgamation of both.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think it's like, oh, I need to have this or I can't survive, or I need to be in a dumpy place or I can't survive. I think it's that she wants both of those things because she needs both of those things, because that's really who she is.
Because of the fact that she wants to be able to control everything, her situation, her life.
The way Lorelai and Emily try to control.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of that, because like she found her niche with the book, and all of that, unsettled aspect of Rory trying to figure herself out, trying to find her footing. I think that kind of led to that. Obviously that wasn't positive for her and Lorelai for a while. They got over that. They worked that out. But I think, Rory's always wanted to be a journalist. I think that was good. She had that moment, but I think there was also more in her. And they wanted to push her to the point where her resolution of that was writing the book. And that came about, when and I think it was always in her, but I think, again, Jess helped pull that out of her. That was something that they were able to kind of find footing together. He's already a publisher, he's already in that world, and so it's a perfect match, because here he is publishing books. She's always been a writer. She's always loved books, and I think that's why they connected, because he loved books in that world as much as she does. And now suddenly it's like two halves of this greater whole. They're trying to, it set it up beautifully, to move forward in that direction.
So yeah, he absolutely encouraged her to write the book.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Interesting. So this would be the question that I would pose. She's always been a journalist, right? It was the paper, it was the
right.
Everything else was always journalism. I mean, she went on the campaign trail, everything else like that. Journalism doesn't always translate into being an author.
Oh.
Would she have authored a book if not for Jess?
I did see, though, I
don't think so.
I don't know if she would have gotten that far, but there may have been something in her, because we just restarted the whole series. We're in season 1, and I just saw the episode where the I smell snow scene, and Lorelai and Rory are having that conversation, and she's like, Max is my teacher. Ooh, that's kind of gross. I'm supposed to respect him. You like him. And she's like, well, I'm sorry. She goes, no, that's okay. It's just more fodder for the tell-all. And I was like, you see, it was already in her. Like it was there. Like it was a joke.
Yeah.
But it was already there, you know? So I was like, I mean, and that part was inspiration for A Year in the Life too. They're like, we referenced this in season 1. Rory actually does the tell-all. Let's try this story, you know, that sort of thing. But it was cool to see that one little comment back in the middle of season 1 turns into this giant story arc, you know, in A Year in the Life. Here's this character, you know, almost 20 years later.
However, I will say this. When you say tell all, to me, that goes back to, it sounds more like a magazine.
Oh, that's true. More journalism versus
back to journalism.
author. Yeah. So he could have molded her idea of doing a book. She's always been in love with books. It's a quick jump, but Jess probably had a huge part in putting it in the direction of a book versus a magazine or some other form of print.
I really feel like Jess had a bigger impact on her than the others, or I should say a more meaningful impact on her than Dean or Logan. More genuine.
Yeah. I think they were able to connect in a deeper level. Again, she was the book nerd. She didn't want the jock. She wanted the brain, not the brawn. And so at first, here he was, a bad boy, which was attractive to her. But then when she got to know him, there was a deeper layer of the boy that she always wanted, the boy of her dreams. And so I think it was just like twofold, and she got to connect with him on a deeper level, and that's what she wanted.
And I will say this, and this is a positive thing for Logan, because so, you know, the bad boy is the confidence, right? You had the lack of confidence, the confidence, right? And then now you've got Logan, who is overly confident, but yet has a little bit of the lifestyle of Richard and Emily, right? So we know that she is keen to that, right? She doesn't necessarily like want that, but it's mixed in. So that's why it comes back to that. I think that's some of the appeal. So I will give you that. I will say that is, I think,
no, I understand why she's with Logan. Yeah.
Yeah.
For those reasons you mentioned.
For those seasons.
For the reasons that you mentioned, but yeah, just for those seasons. Like yeah.
I heard seasons the first time too.
I did too. That's what I was like, that's a perfect disclaimer, man.
Just for those seasons.
I will say that for the book deal, it was Jess's seed of an idea that made her do that. I will also say that had anyone said that to her at that point, I think she would have run with it because she was desperate and had nothing else. So I think that anyone could have done it. It happened to be Jess that said it to her. But with the Yale thing, with Jess showing up and saying, what are you doing? I think that was actually, you know, that was a good thing. I don't think that's what pushed her back to Yale. I think that's what made her realize she was living Emily's life and not her own life. And Jess thought, you should be living what Lorelai taught you. You should be that person you were with Lorelai, but that's not who she is. And I think that with Jess, I think he just loves this idea of who she was or who he thought she was, but she is a mix of both worlds, and Jess doesn't want that. He wants who she was in Star Solid. He wants that kind of person. And I think that with the book thing, yes, I will give that to you. Yes, he was the reason she wrote a book. I think it's insane that she didn't think about that sooner.
Yeah,
personally, but
I agree with you on that.
She was in such a bad place that anyone could have suggested that to her. I mean, it's kind of one of the reasons she started working for the newspaper in Star Hollow, because someone basically thrust her into it. She's like, okay, I'll do this now. And then Jess comes along, you should write a book. Was Jess correct? 100%. But the other aspect of journalism too is that you know a good story.
Oh yeah, you have
a need. Yeah, but nobody else told her.
I know. That's why I said
nobody else said it.
And then again, because he also, as far as like their likes and interests, I think he was kind of like the male Rory. So he was able to see that. Maybe she couldn't see that, but he was able to see that, you know, because they have those similarities. Well, I mean, as far as like
later on, maybe,
you know, yeah, later on, maybe
not teen though at all.
No, not teen Jess at all. Again, if he was nurtured properly, yeah, he probably could have been. But as far as like their interests, their you know, again, we keep talking about how that their they have an equal love of books, the whole literary world, just in that aspect, that was something that she could really click with. So he had similar thought processes that, he was able to see it where, someone else wouldn't have been able to see it because they have other knacks and other talents and other thought processes.
Yeah.
I think that he had one of the best growth arcs in Gilmore Girls, honestly.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I think Rory went, whoo, and Lorelai was kind of like, eh. But Jess was the only one to actually make something of himself, but also because he was the only one who got repaired and who repaired himself. No, I don't think there's another character on Gilmore Girls who had the background that Jess did, who had the trauma, who had the bad behavior, who had all these things. I mean, for goodness sake, when he tried forcing himself on Rory in that bedroom during that party because he was upset, he went from that to who he was at the end. And that guy in that bedroom, I would have throat punched. Like, no, there's nothing that can make that okay, no matter how broken and damaged you are. Nothing makes that okay. But he went from that, saw I have a deep-seated, really terrible problem that I cannot continue to be this person, and then went through the effort and the work that he put in to change that, to take away all the bad parts and put in the good. So I think his growth arc was fantastic. And even you think of that hockey game when he was supposed to call Rory and he didn't. So Rory went to the hockey game. That's where we meet Lindsay for the first time. And then he shows up, Rory calls him, standing up for herself for the first time in their relationship because she was too afraid to make Jess angry. She was too afraid to hit his emotions and have him lash out like he did constantly. But again, that's because he has a trauma background and he didn't know how to fix it. And he was just swimming in this pain that he had and this brokenness. And there wasn't a way for him to see out of it. But then he shows up and he's like, hey, I got concert tickets. Let's go. And she went and said, hey, ignore that voicemail. So I think that Rory allowed herself to be altered by Jess because he was so exciting, because they were into the same things. But I think that a relationship needs to have more than that. And honestly, I think Jess deserves more than someone who just likes books the way he likes books. Because Jess is I've said it before in this podcast, I'll say it again. He is a solid character at the end.
And may I point out too that we kind of made the same point with Luke and Lorelai, that Luke deserves better than Lorelai. We think that they're together, but Luke is so much better relationship wise. I know we mentioned that in the episode for Lorelai's men, not in a bad way. That's not a diss towards Lorelai. That's just saying that's how much more Luke was putting in to the relationship. So yeah, I kind of get that, again, a lot of times I think it just depends on, like you were saying, he has that growth. Yeah, it's more than just the books. I know we keep coming back to the books. I think that was kind of, again, they were just teenagers, they were kids. So that's what kind of caught Rory's attention, as well as the bad boy aspect of it.
Before you go on, I just want to interject here. And this is why I say they're better off as friends, and that he didn't really love her, because all he knew of Rory was that teenage version that he saw for a year and a half before he ditched town, and then he would come back sporadically. So what does he really know of Rory and who she is? What does he really know of her?
What season was it that he moved for that matter? Although he did, I don't know how often Rory came home to Stars Hollow. I mean, she did come home. They make it seem like she wasn't there for a long period of time. We do know that Jess did move back because he was talking to Luke. He made the comment about,
I don't think he moved back. I think he just would come back and visit Liz.
Mm-hmm. Well, he did make a comment that he was living at Luke's again. He goes, oh, back when I moved in. So I can't remember exactly how he worded it, but he made a comment like when he had lived at Luke's again for a little while, but it made it seem like it was after the fact. So yeah, so I'm not quite sure exactly how much interaction they had as adults. And then of course, I'm trying to remember what season it was. I think it was the summer season that he comes back.
He comes back in summer.
In summer. Okay, that's what I thought. So he has a couple of seasons. I want to say it's summer because that's when she takes over the Stars Hollow.
He's got like 2, maximum 3 scenes total in there. It's not like he, comes back. He just comes into town, then he leaves town again. And it's to see Luke. He stops in and talks to her for like 3 minutes, and then he goes off to see Luke. And even when he is at the house, like Rory shows up and he leaves.
He's got to leave again because it's too painful to be in the same house with her Yeah, I'm trying to picture, like, obviously we don't see that many scenes, but I'm trying to think, like, do they say how much time they've actually had together since we've seen them last in the original series? You
And
know,
see, this
if
is my
they keep
thing.
a friendship, or is it the first time they've seen each other
Mhm.
since then? You know,
Because
I
there's so
can't
much
remember.
left out. We can make up our own stories about Logan, about Jess, about everybody, because there's a lot of things that we have not seen. And there's a 10-year age gap.
Yeah.
So they could be
So
seeing each other a boatload or not a lot. We don't know what people agreed on, what they didn't agree on. But in terms of, like, even if you just take a year in the life out of it and you just look at the first 7 seasons, or even 6, if you need to just look at the first 6 because the Paladinos didn't write 7,
Mhm.
he left her when she didn't even know herself. She was this when she was with Jess when they were teenagers. Rory was this scared, self-conscious, insecure person, and she didn't like Dean with her. I mean, she was essentially Dean with Jess when Dean was with Rory, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Did I say that right? And because she was afraid to ignite Jess's emotion, she was afraid to ignite his temper, and she didn't want to upset him because he did fly up the handle sometimes. When he got mad, he got mad. He would come back and apologize, absolutely, but he would still get mad. And I think Jess or Rory wanted to be with him so bad, in the same way that Dean wanted to be with Rory so bad, that she just put up with behaviors, thinking, no, he has potential for better. He has potential for more. He can be better. He can be better. He can be better. And so that's who Jess knew. And then he got out of town. He came back when she was in Yale, and she was with Logan, and she was in the DAR, and she was this completely different person, saying, I know you better. How do you know her better than anybody else? You know who she was in high school, but even when you came back and in the end of her freshman year at Yale, you saw her for what, 10 minutes? You saw her a couple of times in Stars Hollow, or one time you drove off, and the other time she said some things to you and then you separated. So it's not like you spent a lot of time together knowing who she is. And I really think that Jess loved the idea of who she was. And I think Rory did him a complete disservice.
And I think too, like you mentioned, in that moment when, you know, he's asking her, how come you didn't go to Yale? Rory didn't really know who she was at that time either. So even if he didn't know who she was, I think he could tell that whoever that was, even Rory herself didn't know. So if he didn't know, that's okay, because Rory didn't know, this is not you, whoever this is. So even if she's no longer, you know, high school Stars Hollow Rory, and maybe he doesn't know who she is in that moment, he knows enough to be like, hey, this isn't you, and you need to find out who you are. Don't let, you know, the facade, don't let all of these other aspects that keep getting in your way, all of the facade that you're believing into, don't let that mold you, if that makes sense.
And I'll say this, I think A Year in the Life ended with Rory not knowing who she is. I think she can tell the story who she was, but she still doesn't know who she is.
Yeah.
No.
I still don't think Rory knows who she is.
No.
But I think, like what happened with Lorelai, and there's another parallel. This is playing into that parallel that you guys were discussing earlier. Like with Lorelai, she got pregnant, she got out of that house. Having Rory shaped who Lorelai is as much as Emily shaped who Lorelai is. And I think that's the parallel that's going to happen here, is Rory being a mother is going to shape who she is just as much as her experience have shaped who she is.
You know,
It comes full circle.
and so that's kind of one of the things. It's like, so I agree with you. I think there's some missing information as far as like the time that
So much.
Jess and Rory spent together. Yeah, and I mean, and then
Well, even with Logan and Rory, there's so much information that's missed.
right. So there's a lot that's not there. I mean, and you know, obviously, you know, they're 1 hour shows, right? You know, or not even right. I guess they're like, you know, so it's like, you know, we only get
more.
right. We only get so much in so many seasons, and so it's just one of those things where we don't get to see all the little in between things. But having said that, I see your point about him maybe not knowing who she was, but if she never truly understood who she was throughout the whole series that we see, then that's not a huge, how do I say, um, um, that's not a huge element of how, you know, he would how he would feel, or validity or invalidation of how he would feel
No,
for her.
I think he doesn't know who she is. I think he knows who she was, or the person she was then. I mean, just because Rory didn't know who she was doesn't mean she wasn't a person. I think he didn't know who she is currently, but I think that he knew who she portrayed herself to be then.
Well, yeah, and well, obviously, when they met up again, like, especially before, when she had left Yale, that scene, yeah, he didn't know who she was. I mean, because he didn't recognize who she was, but neither did she. So it's kind of like, it's kind of one of these things. Somebody changes so much, it's like, hey, your core is completely different. You know what I mean? It's not just, a few things here and there. You know what I mean? And Rory, for the most part, I mean, there's a lot of things she kept hidden, but she kept a lot of stuff on her sleeve. You know what I mean? It just was pretty much easy to, I think a lot of the characters did. You can't live in a small town like that and not live with your heart on your sleeve. You know what I mean? It's like everybody knows everybody. Would they make that joke how many times? Oh, it's a small town,
Yeah.
It's like, take me to what Paris, it's like, take me to the bad part of town. Oh, it's right over there. They're fighting over a green fence, Everybody knows.
Movie theater curtain or movie store curtain.
Exactly.
Amanda, you have a list of things you like about Jess.
Yes.
I think she's the one who has a list of things she likes about Jess. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I have there's way more things I like about Jess than just these. I just wrote down some key points.
Okay.
One of my number one things is Jess got Rory out of her goody two shoes ways. He tested her in different ways than he did. In my opinion, he did. She would never have sprouted. I don't think she would have become the person she is if she hadn't been with Jess and had that experience with Jess. If she had gone from just Dean to Logan, she would have been a different person. I feel like Jess
I'll give you that. Yeah, I'll say that.
Jess molded her. Not molded her. I don't want to say that. He didn't mold her.
I wouldn't say that either.
No, I mean, that's not what I'm trying to say. He did. He influenced a lot of her life without us really even realizing it or knowing it.
He influenced her a lot. I mean, I don't see, and I think that's one of the reasons why people don't like Jess, because I mean, we talked about it earlier, her going off and missing the graduation. I mean, that was a shock. I mean, it's like, that's not Rory. Rory, Lorelai, this is her mom. She's gotta be here. What is she doing? You know what I mean? And so it's like, he influenced her a lot.
Yeah.
And
impact too, I think, is a good word.
Just playing devil's advocate here. Is there another scene other than that one that you can think of where he influenced her and we can see it play out?
The book.
Yeah.
Anything in the regular show? The one scene.
Anything in the regular show?
If I really thought about it, I could probably come up with other things. I just put my key points down.
No, I was asking Josh the question.
Oh.
In the main, in outside of the year of life.
Yeah, and I'm not fishing. I'm genuinely just asking if you can give me some examples of when he influenced her.
Well, I mean, I think that getting back to Yale, I think that was a big influence from him. His shock,
I
because
feel like he kept her real. He kept her grounded.
Grounded her back. Yeah. I mean, at the end of that scene, she's like, I think she even says something like, "Oh yeah," or something like, like,
he says, I don't know.
That's right. That's what it is. I don't know. Like, yeah. And so I think she came to the realization then. Now, anybody else could have said that, but it was Jess that did.
And I think she never quite stopped. I mean, she was obviously very hurt by him and moved on, but I think there's probably a little bit of her that still regarded him more than others because it was Jess, and Jess really, I mean, she was so taken by Jess that even after all that time had passed, he still had a special place in her. She still had a soft spot for him, and obviously I think he never stopped intensely loving her. And I think he full on, truly, sincerely loved her, and there was probably times where she maybe wasn't fully in love with him. But I do think that, there were times where, again, she regarded it higher because it did come from a place that, she said, I think I loved you once. I think that was more than just, I loved you once and it's gone, it's over with. They have like a really big history there. I think that, even in that moment, whether she admitted it to herself or not, I think there was still a love for Jess in her. And I think even beyond that, in Year in the Life, there's that love for Jess. However much she admits it or doesn't admit it, it's there, so someone else could have said it, but because here's someone questioning her that she regards so much, she's going to take it to heart. It's going to slap her in the face.
Rick walked up to her and said, like, Rory, this isn't you. I thought you wanted to go to this school.
Right. Yeah. It could have been. Yeah. Even Paris had that same argument, and she came to Lorelai's house and Luke was there. He's like, I agree. And how many times did Paris argue her all summer? And I have this apartment, and this
Paris
we're going
didn't
to
argue her all summer. They talked at the end of summer and at the beginning.
Of summer and the end of summer. Yeah, but she still argued.
I will say that when Luke and Lorelai and Paris all argued with her is when she was just fresh off that arrest and has made this decision. I think if Jess would have said that to her fresh off that arrest and in the situation she was in, she'd be like, no, I'm not doing this. But she was already starting to question what she was doing and why she was doing it. And she was already starting to be unhappy with Emily. And we could see that when she's in the bedroom and he's in there with her and she's putting things under the door so Emily doesn't hear her.
She doesn't hear, yeah.
Clearly dissatisfied with her life at that moment.
I think probably she would have maybe come to better realization sooner. I
think she needed to shove for sure.
Yeah.
She needed that because she was being an idiot.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think because she was already dissatisfied and she was already to the point where I don't like this, but I don't know how to fix it. Someone needed to say something, and Jess was the one who said something. I don't think he's responsible for going back to Yale, but she needed that kick in the pants that he was the one who gave it to her.
And
I said I think he was responsible for it because he was the one that gave her the kick in the pants. They gave her that jolt forward.
The push.
I think
final push.
I think there's a lot of things we aren't shown in the fandom. I think that we have to.
I think it's time to get Amy Sherman Palladino on the show so she can just settle all of this and answer all the questions.
I think they should write a script companion to all the things that we missed, especially between where she went. We're going to do it from the season 6 ending. Do it from the season 6. Forget season 7 exists. Write it from season 6 ending to the beginning of Year in the Life and tell us what we missed.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I
would be so cool. Absolutely. Let's start this. Let's do this, guys. Let's start a movement.
Because she loves both Jess and Logan. She loves them both.
Mm-hmm.
So that they have some good scenes in there. They have some good meetups somewhere. All right, Amanda, let's finish out your list and then we're going to end this because we've been here for an hour and a half.
I only have like one more thing that we haven't touched on. One, he wrote a book for her, and don't come at me because he did write it for her. If it wasn't for her, that book would have never been written. He wrote a book for her. Okay.
How so?
She pulled it out of him.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How?
He would never have written that book if it wasn't for his relationship with Rory.
I think he even said something about that. She believed in him. Yes. And there's a comment, I wish I can remember what it was, but there was dialogue that hinted at, hey, because I think it was like, she's like, you see, I knew you had it in you. I knew you could do it. I think
that's what she said to him. Yeah. I think
that's what I feel
Jess.
like I
wouldn't give Rory any credit for that. I think Jess pulled that out of himself.
No, I think Rory had that. I think that's why he came to Rory, and that's why he brought her a book and showed it to her. Because if it wasn't for her, he would not have written that book.
I think maybe he was inspired to be a better person because of his love for Rory. Mm-hmm. I think that he finally had a reason to care. He finally had a reason to better himself and to reach for it.
I will give you that. Yeah. I think that, like we were saying earlier, Rory is the one person who actually, other than Luke, even though he didn't realize it, who showed him, you are so much more than this. You can be so much more than this. You should be so much more than this because you have the potential to be more than this. I agree with that. And I think that's why he kept coming back to Rory, because Rory was the one who believed that in him. I don't think it was necessarily that, but I think no one else gave him that feeling, because no one else put that time and effort into Jess other than Rory and Luke. No one else, no one put that much time into him.
Nobody loved him the way she did.
Nobody loved him the way that she did.
Oh, tears.
Yep. Maureen, something's coming out the top of your head.
Here's the thing though. Familial and platonic love is a very real thing.
Yeah.
Very real.
I agree with you.
And I think that it's that type of love that pulled him out of there. I think they thought it was something else, but I think that Jess just desperately needed someone to believe in him. And when he was at his worst moment, she was the one who did. And she sent him that call, or when he called her from the payphone. How many of you listening to this know that those don't exist anymore? But he called her from the payphone at her graduation, and she said to him, I think I loved you. That is what he held on to, I think, was that. But she said, but we'll never know. And you left before we could find out. I think that's something that we need to hone in on too. But I think for Jess, she was able to say that when he was at his worst. I mean, he abandoned her and he did some pretty terrible things. And in his head, I was at my worst. No one else loved me. And I was this terrible person. And yet you still stood up for me. You still stood by me. You still did this for me. So I think that people who undergo trauma, they grasp onto those things and it sticks with you. And I think that's what Rory was for Jess. I think that she served this beautiful beacon for him that never gave up, that allowed him to go forward out of it.
Yeah, but that definitely belittles everything in a way, because I don't think he was just latching on to the first thing that made sense because of his trauma. I think that
I don't think Rory made sense for him.
No, I don't want to say that showed compassion or love. I really don't think that's the only appeal that Roy had. I really don't.
No, I think that, I mean, you look at the first scene there together. He was attracted to her. He was attracted to her because she's beautiful. He was attracted to her because they were into the same things. And then for the first year of their knowing, it was just him antagonizing her essentially over her relationship with Dean. And then once they got together, it was them having to defend the relationship to everybody else all the time. And him filled with this angst and anger that he couldn't control. And Rory continually saying, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. I mean, because even the Jess fandom has to admit, he was not a good kid when he was a teenager. He wasn't.
No, yeah,
but again, it's not his fault. But he wasn't. And so when I don't mean to belittle it, because I think the reason he loved her was because he sees it as true love. It's that saying of, if you're able to love someone at their worst, then you must really love them, right? Or if you care for this person at the worst, you must really care for them. And I think that's what he latched onto, is she had to have really cared for me. And I cared for her because I needed her in the same, I mean, you see it with Luke too. I think it's the same sort of thing with Luke and Jess as it is with Rory and Jess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, more parallels. Yeah.
I will agree. Grown up Jess is too good for Rory. 100%.
So, but the thing, well, no, I won't go into that one then.
But then you can see that same parallel too,
I
because
realize what that says about Logan. I realize it.
Right. That's what
I mean, but honestly, it's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, it is the truth. And that just shows you the growth that Jess had. Rory was above Jess for a long time, and Jess surpassed her, and she did not catch up. That's my opinion. I feel like Logan is a lot more at Rory's level when it comes to a lot of their
and they want the same things.
ways of life.
Rory and Logan want the same things. Jess and Rory don't.
Yes.
I really think that's what it comes down to.
Do I think that adult Jess and Rory could actually be happy and get married and have kids and live a great life? I really do. I think they have enough in common. But at the end of the day, I think that adult Jess can find somebody better that would treat him better than Rory could. I think Rory
That
would
would live at
always
his
go back
level,
and
too.
forth.
Yeah, I mean I think that's fair. I understand. I agree with that. I think that's fair. I don't think there's a lot that we realize that Rory's character, it's flawed, and I that's okay.
That's the beautiful thing about it.
Right. Yeah.
That's life. That's real.
Exactly. That's exactly right. One of the things that, and I think, and I don't know how much of it was done on purpose at the beginning, but I think that's how the whole story just kind of comes together, because it's like you have these expectations, right? And you're like, okay, Rory's going to be this and she's going to do that. She's going to go to Harvard. She's going to be, and then nothing happens. You know what I mean? And everything else, exact opposite. And of course, that adds resentment. And there's people, I've seen comments and everybody about, oh, the worst character on TV. It's like,
I wouldn't go that far.
No, I've seen them. And I'm like,
that's crazy.
You know what I mean? It's like, this is like one of the best shows, if not the best show on TV, and one of the best characters.
100%.
Yeah.
I think we like it because it did not play out how you would expect it to play out. It gave you twists and turns, and she didn't go to Harvard. She went to Yale. She dropped out of Yale, and you're going, what?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the beautiful thing about TV, and that's why we get lost into these fake worlds.
All into these patterns, you know what I mean? It's like, go watch a Hallmark movie.
Exactly.
All the same, just with a different actor. And then sometimes they throw a Christmas tree in. You know what I mean? It's just like, but it's the same story.
And you know what? I've seen every one of them.
The other thing that we need to remember about her is that we only get Rory in high school and college too.
Yeah.
We don't see her in it. We see her 10 years down the road. She is right out of college when she was praised for all of her journalistic. She never could do anything wrong. She always got perfect grades, accolades, always these things. That's going to fall hard. And we get the end of the fall. We don't see where she was building up to. We don't see how she functions as an adult. So we have this idea, oh, she's so spoiled, but we don't see any growth there because we missed that adulthood. She is still learning who she, and that's why I made the case I did for Jess doesn't know who she is, because through high school and college, she's still figuring out who she is. In college, I studied a major. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Not really. I was studying what I thought I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And we don't see her start the rest of her life. We see her be shut out into the world. We don't even really see her shut out in the world. We just hear that she's going to start going out in the world, and that's where it ends. So
yeah, and as much as everybody hated it, Huntsberger, I don't even remember his first name, but what's not?
Oh, you're talking Mitchum. You're not talking Logan. You're talking Mitchum. Okay, we're good.
I thought you were talking about Logan too. I was like, wow.
Logan's name, Josh.
I'm not even gonna say his name.
I was gonna be on the Logan podcast. I would just be calling him the one I shall not name, but no, I'm just joking.
I think I know where you're going with this, so keep going.
But yes, but Mitchum, as hard as that advice was, and as hard it was for everybody to hear, because this was our Rory, right? We were excited. We wanted her to succeed in everything. But what did he do? He laid it out straight.
I don't think he did anything wrong there at all.
I don't either. That's an unpopular opinion.
I don't think he did anything wrong there.
It was a hard
conversation
to swallow. Yeah, no. He's got his own faults. It was a very hard pill to swallow, but it was true. She had to get out there and not just because she was a Gilmore. She had to get it on her own merit.
Yeah.
And I think that was a good life lesson that maybe she didn't completely grasp, and didn't follow.
She thought it was unfair and undeserved, and everyone in her life told her.
That had a lot to do with Emily and Richard, though.
Sure.
Because they backed her up too much, and they told her, no, you're perfect. You don't.
Lorelai and Luke did it too.
Yes, and that's the whole problem with Rory is everybody put her on a pedestal from the time that she was born.
And when you're in a town like Stars Hollow, that's not hard to do.
It's easy.
No, I mean, and we all do it with our kids. We all want to put our kids on a pedestal. That's absolutely fine. But when you get thrown out into the real world, you know, Deborah and Ron down the road are not going to put you on a pedestal.
And not to rehash anything, but this goes back again to parallels, right? Because Richard and Emily had the ability to put Lorelai on a pedestal, right?
Yes.
They had the funding, they had the clout and the recognition to be able to do that, but that didn't happen. Lorelai, on the other hand, was putting Rory on a pedestal, but had none of the recognition, none of the ability to do it. But it was easy because they were in a small town. So here was Rory being held up to this high standard and saying, hey, this is great, but had no foundation or nothing to back it up with.
Yeah.
And,
and I think Rory worked really hard to hit that pedestal too.
Oh, she did. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because this is who I am. I'm the perfect daughter. I'm the perfect townsperson. I'm the straight A student. I'm the this. So I'm going to be this because that's what people tell me I am.
Even the thing with Dosey with opening up, you were at the Purim Festival, you were the pilgrim, and suddenly she couldn't be there. She can be the ice cream queen. So that was like a little kind of direct parallel of that. But pedestals without foundations, it's going to come crashing down and break. And I think that's what it was. She didn't have a proper foundation. And as much as Lorelai fiercely loved her, she did her the greatest injustice by not giving that solid foundation that would in turn create all the success that she was trying to give Rory. She just missed that step, and she didn't see that she was missing that step. But I think that does lead to parallels, and that does lead to circles too. Earlier, to go off of what we're saying about Jess, kind of surpassing Rory. I think that's kind of poetic too, because now it's almost like he can reach down and help her out. So here she was teenage Rory, had, maybe things a little bit put together. She was still in high school. She seemed like she was going to have everything put together. We were saying all that potential. And then here's Jess that's spiraling. Now it's the opposite. He's found his footing, and now he can now pull her out and see her for her true potential, and then help her out,
I don't think anyone should pull her out by herself, because I don't think she's ever had to do anything on her own. Even the job she had, that New Yorker piece, she had it in. And I think the parallel that we should be drawing is like Jess, when Jess had to hit rock bottom before he could become the man he is, she has to hit that bottom that she's never hit before, so she can pull herself out and become who she actually is.
Oh, absolutely. Because she has to make that decision on her own. She has to choose, just like Jess chose. But at the same time, too, there's people along the way that can help. So just like, I don't know if Jess really had any help outside of Luke, even giving him those books, but he can be there to help her. But yeah, she has to make that decision. She has to take those steps for herself, obviously.
I would go as far as saying that Jess had the ending that Rory we all expected Rory to have.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's true, because you expected X, Y, and Z to happen for Rory and not for Jess. And suddenly Jess gets that success. Again, it was a cycle, they started at one end and then ended up on the other end.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I think go ahead, Josh.
I said, I think we like this show just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
I'm gonna tell you, if it was not this time of night, because I don't know if you listeners know, but we always record at night after our children go to bed. So it's late for us. All right. So if it was not this time of night, I would continue to talk, and I would shut up. I do this. And if you have ever been on our Gilmore page, which by the way is Gilmore Girls, Gilmore Family Fan Club on Facebook, and have ever interacted with me on a Jess Logan debate, you will find out that I respond in essay form. Got an introduction, a body, and a conclusion, and it's at least 18 paragraphs long. So I like to talk about this show. I've watched the show all the way through from season 1 to season the end. It ended every single year since it's come out, except for, obviously while season 1 was out, I couldn't rewatch, what I mean. But I've watched it all the way through. I've been watching it since 2001. I have a lot of ideas of who these characters are and what I think is good for them. And I think that the brilliancy here in this show is that the Palladinos managed to write something where that exact same emotion is in every single watcher of this show. And it's good that it's actually kind of a masterpiece that they were able to do this, where we all feel so so passionately about these different characters and have such different ideas of where these characters should be and how they came to be and who they are, but we're all seeing the same show. It's brilliant. It's a brilliant piece. And if you have not watched it, is it still on Netflix? It's still on Netflix, right? Is it going away soon?
Yes.
And according to our inside source, it'll be there till the beginning of 2024.
Okay, good. So
binge.
If you have not seen Gilmore Girls, I mean, first of all, what in the world have you been doing with your life? Second of all, what are you waiting for? Go and watch Gilmore Girls. It's got 7 seasons plus 4 1-hour parts and called A Year in the Life. It's on Netflix. Please do yourself a favor and go watch it. You can follow a bunch of them on TikTok and on Instagram. They all have all these things. John Cabrera is one. If you haven't seen our interviews, we've done an interview with John Cabrera with Rini, who plays
Brian.
Rini Bell, who plays Lulu. We've done one with Valerie Campbell, who is a part of the crew on Gilmore Girls. We've done one with Shelley Cole, who plays, why can I not remember any?
Madeline.
Madeline. So go watch those interviews. Even the cast and crew are still in love with the show 20 years later. Yep. Still love it. So it's something worth watching. And we want to know what you think about Jess. Our Logan one's coming up next. But what do you think of Jess? Do you think he was right for her? Do you think he wasn't right for her? Do you think that he was her end game story or no? Let us know in the comments. Join us on our Facebook group when we post this and let us know truly what you think about Jess. And be nice. I feel like I need to say that. So we want to know what you think in a respectful, healthy way. Remembering that these are just characters and we are not the characters, so don't come at us.
Yeah. And I think it is deserves an honorable mention because I kind of felt this too when I hear that other people. Team Marty. Like, I know he made really weird mistakes later on, but there was a moment, I think that's cool.
Absolutely. I am 100% okay with this.
And like Luke was saying, hey, none of the boyfriends were good enough, but let's not forget Team Marty. Maybe.
I liked Marty.
I liked Marty. I don't ever count him as one of Rory's suitors because they were never together. But I do like Marty. He got weird in season 7, but as Valerie Campbell said, that wasn't the Paladinos.
Right.
Before, I liked him before.
I did too.
So,
same.
Tune in for our Logan episode. Watch that one. Let us know what you think. Get ready for our debate that we're going to have amongst our team. Whoever is able to be on, will be on. Hopefully, we have at least one Team Jess person on there because our admin team is largely Team Logan, except for Bethany, who is Team Dean. Amanda, who is Team Switzerland.
Somebody to represent Team Dean in that.
We've got 2 Team Jess people on our team.
Why?
So, but there's only 4 of us that are Team Logan. That's it. Just 4. So
they just seem like they're a lot more.
It's just because we're louder. And we will see you tomorrow night for our Logan episode. Bye, guys.
Wow. Bye. Team Dean.
Loving our content? Subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't forget to share our podcast with your family and friends. We want to continue the conversation with you. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok under Fandom Family Chats or one of our ever-growing Facebook groups by searching Family Fan Club. We've also launched a website, Family Fan Club 2021 at wixsite.com. You can email us there and keep checking it for announcements and merch coming soon. And of course, be sure to tune in every week for new episodes discussing all your favorite shows.